All right, well, here comes the 68 Coronet coming to the shop. I'll take some video of it inside. Alrighty, well there is our 68 Coronet. It is now in the shop. The trunk panel and hood are both over there. We've been working on them for the past week, getting them nice, so now we can put them back on the car. Just did a real quick undercoating on that. The trunk is nice. He's been working on this in his garage at home for a while, and now we are going to tear it apart, blow it apart, and jam it out and make it pretty. I'll show processes of that through the way. Well, while Barrett Jackson's rattling off in the background, we just kind of put the hood back on, and it actually fit so well that the gaps flushed right through there really nice, and there should be some more fine-tuning adjustment to it, but we're going to be taking the fenders off, blowing this all apart to paint it, so it's so close right now that I don't need to do any more to it. And the hinges work well. It's holding everything up. So happy with how that came out. We do have a few little bummer of the guy that originally was working told them they want all metal work and no filler. And we've had a few little, there was a crack back in here. So I hit it with the grinder to see what it was, and it was pure filler in this area, and it's pretty deep. So I'm going to have a little more work on this roll pan tomorrow. When we fit the trunk, we had to cut this back and readjust this frame. So I'm going to have a little bit of blending in this back fender. The rear tail panel, where did we put that? It wasn't fit all the way. And the original one for the car, this little panel here, it basically, with these bolts, bolt into these holes right here, and it bolts right onto that. They were like sheet metal screwed in and like bolted in and then body worked to it. So I need to get this prepped out and primed and get it all fitted. But we also have some chipped filler in this back corner that needs to be addressed. The rear bumper fits beautifully. I'm actually really happy with how it's fitted in there. This rear panel piece needs some adjustment and love here, but it's screwed to the panel, and I have no, unless I want to cut it off, I don't know if we're going to take that off or put it on. But I think we're going to kind of work these in, prime it so it's sealed, and paint them in the vehicle or on the vehicle. It's some of the fender work and some of the stuff where they glued and put in is really nice. Some of the others is not the greatest, but it's pretty solid. Good solid trunk and floor. So we are going a kind of a burnt copper black top with the black rally stripe on the back. And that should make her look cool. This gap is a little high right here because the hood needs to be pushed down more on it. But I think tomorrow, it's a little late on Friday, he dropped the car off to start working on it. But I'll start on it tomorrow, start getting some more body work done. The trunk fits nice. That's got 4 coats of epoxy, been sanded multiple times, so I'm down to 320 on it. So I'll 320 sand the bumper or the trunk, and it's good to go. So that's how far we got tonight. Found a couple little flaws and nicks and things in it. Definitely has a little more filler than the owner was hoping it had. He got told it was worked close to metal and in primer, and he bought it basically in this condition. It's been sitting in a body shop for over 20 years. I guess the guy that owned the body shop that was working on it passed away, and it's turned into a whole project. So he's taken it over, been doing a lot at home, and now it's over at my place to kind of help him get it in color. So I think it'll leave here hopefully looking real pretty. Let's show you what I get going on tomorrow. I'll sit and watch some more Barrett Jackson. Well, I kind of forgot to film some of our steps through the day, but we have got them stripped. We've spot primed some bare metal spots that have gone through. We found some areas like right through here. As I was sanding, I saw a little crack, hit it with a grinder, and unfortunately the previous person who did a bunch of work here, there's really thick filler in here, so I had to get up underneath, kind of hammer it out, work it out. So that took some body work and to finish that through. So this will need to get block sanded tomorrow and cleaned up. Blowing it off, I ended up blowing some paint off of the fins, because instead of some of the intakes on some of the cars where this comes off, this is actually part of the car. So there's a lot of cleaning some dirt and things down in here, and had to blend and repair that over that direction. We are putting the stainless on the top edge, but there's a couple little nicks in here I'm probably going to address just so they look nicer in the paint. Same thing here. Yeah, excuse me, little hiccups. Same thing here. We had a little crack in this region in here. Had some thick filler, so had to work that out, fix that. The metal in here we were talking about yesterday, that's now been fixed. The this back fender here where the dovetail is nice and repaired. I've got a pretty heavy run in my primer, which that's all gotten blocked out tomorrow, so that'll get sanded out. This trim piece had a pretty good dent in it right up in this body line, right through there. So that got hammered and dollied out, and now I have a ton of primer put on it, so I'll sand that to get rid of that. I'm hoping that this little nick right there will disappear with some sanding. If not, I'll put just a little bit of glaze right on it to seal that up. But this guy's getting really close to ready for paint. So it's all been prepped, and need to sand the trunk and the hood a little bit more. Hood's got some work cleaning up on the edges. And then we will put sealer over the whole thing. I don't think I'm going to do the sealer paint in one day and go right at it. I think I want to put sealer on, let sealer dry, and then do a Scotch-Brite of the sealer just to get it that just nicer, smoother, nice finish. Unlike a lot of my other little videos of wipe and spray paints, we're trying to do a pretty decent paint job on this guy. It is going to be a driver. He wants to take it to shows in that way, but he's had some really high-end nice cars before, and he wants something that he can drive around, take to the grocery store, and not worry about it in the parking lot, but he still wants it looking good. So it's supposed to be like more of a burnt copper, and that high metallic copper should look really awesome. Black vinyl top. We may paint the vinyl top or paint the top something, and then the rally stripes over the trunk in the back when it's all done. I don't know if we're going to do that in the clear or the base coat clear coat of that, but we will go step by step through it. And that's where today ended. I think tomorrow we'll be doing a lot of sanding. I'll show a little progress at the end of tomorrow. All right, so we got everything steam cleaned. All the panels were spot primed and wet sanded today. And then we washed all the panels down. Got everything pretty well wiped out. Still have a little bit of standing water in there. We got a blowout. So that roof is nice and flat and smooth. Had a little bit of work in here. There's some water spots on that still. Got the panels on. Got that gap looking good and finished in that way. So that fits in there well, comes across there. That was a water line of stuff. Then we took some sheet metal, threw some sheet metal down, and we've got some primer on it, and then bled it into black. The color that we want to put on Not sure how it's going to affect with a black base to a gray. So we are going to put a good sealer primer on this whole thing, and then just do a light Scotch-Brite to the sealer, and then spray. I am not going to do a sealer paint, and then I am not going to put sealer on it and then paint right on top. I'm going to do a sealer, let it sit, and then just do a light scuff clean, and then go right over the top of that. But that is the progress of this weekend and where we are with the car. We'll show a little more. I'll show what the color samples look like. I think if we like our color samples of those tin pieces, probably going to take the trunk, flip it over, and that primer definitely water spotted, a little funny. But if we like some of the colors on that, I might just take the sealer, put the sealer on the back side of the trunk, paint it, get it done so I can kind of do it as a flat surface, because I don't want to hang the trunk or set the trunk in a matter with those metallics and pearls, spraying it in pieces. I want to make sure when it's all done and we go to assemble it that it doesn't look like multicolored doors don't match this or don't match that kind of thing. So that's what that'll end up being, and that'll be that. There's one last little pass on it, and I'll show when we get some sealer and color going. All right, so Tom came out and brought the paint that he bought, and we sprayed horizontally, sprayed flat. Some panels have 2 coats of base color. That panel was black. This panel was black from here down. You can kind of see in the camera from here down was black. From here up was gray primer. This panel up here, you can really see it in that light. From there over was black. From there over was gray primer. And from here over was 2 more coats of base color to see if it hides. And you can kind of see what's open in there. This panel was black in there, and then the rest of that was all gray. And there's like 6 or 7 coats. You can see I took my finger and kind of wiped how thick it was of base coat, which is a ton of coats, but we were trying to figure out at what point how many coats covers everything. So we just don't want, you know, when you have a flat fender and your side and this is painted, when we put it all together, I don't want the trunk or the hood looking like 2 different colors and having it look like 2 different, you know, vehicles, or painted in different pieces. So I'm a very, very big fan of jamming everything, coloring everything, and then putting it together, and then painting the whole car in one shot, so that when your paint gun goes from this fender to this door and your overlaps and your passes, when you close your door, there's not a color difference between here and here. There's not a color difference between this fender and that door and that. So we're trying to really look at the colors to really decide, you know, the look and the color of what they are, to make sure that the colors kind of blend. And you can see, you can really see that black line. My shadow of my head really shows it too, but you can see that black line in that horizontal panel. The panels that were laying flat blended a little bit better. You can still see that black in there. This only had 2 coats of base coat on, and it really looks a lot lighter. It definitely looks nicer, darker. I like that darker color, and it really covers a lot more. So we are definitely going to need to be putting multiple coats on to get our color transparency the same. We are definitely putting, you know, the same color primer and putting a sealer on all this, so our base is going to be exactly the same, so that once the color goes on, it'll look nice. But that was tonight, doing a little sample. This weekend, probably going to clean this all up, separate things out, and spray primer on everything and get everything primed. And so that everything's got a good coat of primer on it, let it sit for another weekend, and in another weekend, color everything. So, brah. All right, so we brought those samples out in the sun, and they are so drastically different from 1 coat to 2 coats to black pearl and whatever, that we have decided to go with a different grade of paint that isn't so translucent. So if he ever gets a rock chip, and if we paint the fenders and whatever together. So glad we did these samples so we didn't waste time on the car. I would have hated to paint the car and put it together and have a hood different color than a fender to a different color of a door. So yeah, that's what those samples look like out in the sun. They're beautiful, each one individually, but it's funny, that was 2 passes and that one was horizontal. This has black to that, you know, black undertones. That we're not going with this brand of paint, going to go with a different paint. Well, the Coronet is officially 1 color. We've got sealer over everything. We're about to spray water on the floor 1 more time, and then we will jam out the actual color. Show that over here, my lovely mixing table. So here we are, our color. That is a single stage urethane. We're going to do all the door jams, back of the fenders, the engine bay, and then assemble it, and then do the base coat, clear coat in 1 PS on the entire car as a solid car. I'll show the base coat after it's sprayed on. Here we are, jammed out. There's the color on the doors. It's a pretty color. So now tomorrow, after this dries, we'll put the doors and fenders and everything together. So that all this will be the same, and then when we go to paint this, it'll all be, there's no chance of having the fender a slight glaze or a slight shine different than the hood and this, that, and the other. So it'll all get painted in one nice big shot, and I think it'll look absolutely perfect. We do have a perfect color match single stage urethane, and for a single stage urethane, that's actually a really nice color. Has a nice shine to it. I'm really happy with that. For an engine bay and things that way, it looked really good. So we will throw the fenders on tomorrow, throw the doors back on it, get everything aligned, get it jammed up. I am going to then take the hood and the trunk and flip them over and paint the back sides tomorrow. And we won't put the hood and trunk on tomorrow. We'll give that a couple days and then put that on, so that next weekend it will be ready for final paint, and it will be what it will be. Should come out looking really nice. This should be a good head turner. He's excited about it. Now that it actually has some final color on it. That's a good color. All right. Next step, put the fenders and doors on after it dries. Just flip the trunk and hood. And I figured I just might as well show it because it's pretty. Not too bad for a quick sand and open it up. It's going to be a pretty car. So this probably was one of the fastest doors I've ever put on. It was jammed and fit so well, and our gap is great. So before we tore this apart, we took and drilled tiny little holes in the hinge that just accepts a piece of tie wire, and then we were able to get the 2 bolts on. So if you look here, we got a hole here and a hole here. By the way, all these runs and stuff, that was all the old undercoating and stuff on it. That wasn't for me. I mean, I'm not the greatest painter, but I definitely wouldn't have done that. But we put these 2 bolts in, aligned it till those pins came through, and it closed perfect. Literally took one adjustment. You put a jack with a rag on it to get your height right, and it took 2 seconds to put in. So, quick little trick, worked great. We got her all together, wet sanded the whole thing with 600. Just washed it off, it's a little wet. Still have some spots on it that need washed again where you got some primer or some dust and stuff still on it. Had, when it was wet, a tiny little dent right there. So I'm going to blow that clean, take the gun, turn it way down, and I'm just going to lightly dust some primer right through this area. And the next day or two after it dries, I'll wet sand that out, and I'll get that nice and clean. There's also some door nicks that were actually in it from before. Even before it wasn't from when we put the jams on, but like I said, this car was in and out of a bunch of different body shops, and then he bought it basically in primer. So it had been separated and put together a handful of different times. I'm very excited or happy that we are going to be painting it in this method. We will basically be masking off all the jams and doing, you'll mask this side off, mask that off. And I'll do a very heavy masking of the jams. Right now I have a towel in there just so that the door doesn't bang, and that towel keeps it kind of closed up. Our body lines and everything are just laser straight and beautiful. But stuff like up here, this color to this color to this color to this color was all, even though it's water, was all just tiny bit different. Just the way the pearls and metallic kind of lay. So now that we have this together, everything closed in, this to this were slightly different. Now it will be the same exact color. Everything will match perfectly. This has been painted. All of the jams in there have been painted. So all that will come out really nice. And that is the next step. So I think next weekend will be paint and a couple little graphics. We're going to paint the graphics on top or through it. It's looking pretty cool. It's Thursday night. I'm planning on painting this on Saturday. I've been doing little touch-ups. It's one of those things you go around and you find just the tiniest of spots and you fix them and repair them. So I am now lightly Scotch-Briting and cleaning because there's like some sand residue and some wet sanding that's kind of sticking to it. So we're cleaning that off. I'll take the pressure washer and blow it off, and I think tomorrow night I'll get after work and we'll start masking off the inner jams and the under the hood and all that. It's looking really nice. And washed. Alright. Night, y'all. It's Friday night, about 10 o'clock. We're going to be painting this girl tomorrow. We have our jams masked off, everything that way. So it's clean and pulled in. The doors are just going to be lightly closed there. I still need to wipe and clean that, but it's wrapped all the way through on both sides in there. We've got the hood masked off the same way. Hold the plastics in there. This is the paintable plastic that will hold the paint. And we'll just lightly pull that down. And that's going to just seal just like that. And so that is our hood down, masked under. The same thing was done on the trunk. And it's completely done. It's masked from both sides. So we have a little bit more hand wiping to do. Every time I work on it, I find little spots from the previous place and whatever, like just, you know, this corner under here, there was a nick right on this edge, probably when this car's been to 3 or 4 different body shops and had different panels and pieces thrown in it, so probably a trim piece or fender that they threw inside the cab nicked it or whatever. You never saw it after it was primed 3-4 times, but when the shiny copper was on it, you definitely saw it, so that needed to get slightly fixed, but there she is. Tomorrow we start painting. I'm gonna go inside and relax for a little bit, and I'll show the first coat. I think you're basically probably going to show the first coat of base color on it, and then the graphics. We got some cool graphics going on. I'll show all that. There we go. The color. There's the first coat. Actually, I was starting my second coat on this driver's side, but that's why the trunk has some good coverage, because the trunk got 2 coats. And there's only 1 coat over here, so you see it's splotchy. We're doing a roof a different color, so I don't need to do that whole thing. But unfortunately, like we were saying, it was in and out of a bunch of different body shops. Now that it was clear, there's a Bondo crack right there. So I'm gonna heat gun this down, dry it out, fix that, prime that, and then go back to painting. Bummer. I bumped it with the DA. You can see chunks of filler that fell out, and it's a pretty good little divot, and it wasn't stuck in there, so I'm going to hand mix a little primer, put a little primer on that, mix some spot filler, and address that. So there's 2 coats of filler after sanded. We just finished wet sanding. So now I'll blow a little primer on that. Might sand the primer. We'll see how that looks afterwards. So after heat gunning, priming, spot priming, there's 2 coats, and the body line still looks nice. There's no divot. So I'm really liking that. What I'm going to do is, I've got 2 coats on it there with the door open. Then I'm going to close the door and throw some primer on it and go kind of across the door also, so it's not just a blob of primer, so when it's all said and done I don't have a wet spot or a soft spot there that bleeds through, so the primer and the color will blend from all the other colors, that kind of thing. It's now Sunday morning, and something to always learn when trying to do a nice paint job, just don't push yourself. My gun, I use those disposable cups. One of the last times I pushed it in, I even thought the cup didn't quite feel right. I always put my thumb over the cup and I shake the cup. I can even look at the little primer things here. I'll put my thumb right up on top of this and I shake them real hard before I put them on the gun, and then I give my gun a good shake off the side before I go over the vehicle, and I did that. And then I was in the middle of the hood and the gun dripped, 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 and that big ball of reduced paint just instantly softens things that way. I could have taken a heat gun, wiped out, and continued to go yesterday, but then that little crack that was over there that I fixed and repaired, because I fixed it, repaired it, primed it again, wet sanded it, heat gunned it, primed it, and painted it like right away, trying to get it, finished. It had a bunch of little wrinkles in it, and it just didn't look right. So it's one of those deals, you just got to learn to walk away. So walked away from it yesterday, let it dry. I've kind of gone over it with 600 wet sand and just kind of knocked off the nibs and cleaned it up. It's looking real pretty. We don't want to rush it. So this morning I came in, wet sanded that spot down, and I have 1 coat of color over it right now in that blend, and I'm going to keep working that and back to not in a hurry, Get it done smooth. Once I get that looking good, close the door up, do one heavy coat over the whole thing, and the car should be done. I will hit these here in a minute, and I'll hit all these spots also. But that is where we're at. So unfortunately, didn't get it knocked out yesterday. I still think, without a doubt, we will have it done today. Okay, so here is our blended out copper. To die. Now Baker, let her get hot, and then we've got some little graphics and things to get wrapped up on. We're going to be doing a little surround around the bump in a black, the roof in black, and then we're going to be putting a muscle stripe around the trunk here with the word Hemi back in the back corner. And I'll show some of that here in a few minutes. We'll crank the heat on in here and get her ready. So for the graphics, I did half of this side, did this side over here, and I took this piece of paper and I traced it, flipped it over to this side. We're going to be black here with a copper stripe, so this red stripe's going to stay. The green is just, we use that for, I can show it right now. Now this gets demasked out, and that will be the filler. Okay, so there is our stripe masked off. So that'll be black, that'll be copper, that'll be black. The whole roof is going to be black. And then we have ourselves a nice little Hemi stripe with a double line. You don't believe how long it took to get that stripe right. Multiple times. And I actually completely redid the hood too, because after I stood back and looked at it, I just didn't like it, redid it. Let's lay some black. There we are, 3 coats of black. Now that modeliness of it's just base coat, still needs to dry. And then the clear coat will even all this up. It says Hemi in there somewhere. Whoa. Now we have the exciting part of demasking. That's always the most exciting and nerve-wracking, to see if we have any bleeds. But I'll share some satisfaction. Gotta peel. Over here. There's 2 coats, well technically 1 tack coat, 1 thick coat of clear. I'll let this tack up, and then I will put 1 more coat of clear on. That roof looks like just a jewel. Almost see a reflection in it. You can see the phone. And that is, oh, about tripped, fall on my ass. There she is. She's pretty. Top is just gleaming. Hi, me. How you doing? So, I never really am in any of my videos. I won't take a video of me in my video. But you know what? I can take a reflection in a top of a 68 Coronet. That's pretty damn cool. Oh yeah. The wheels are not staying. He is totally changing the wheels. But it rolled here a couple weeks ago. We reworked some of it. Seems like every time you looked at it, you found something else. He wanted to put a vinyl top on. I told me even if we're doing a vinyl top, we really have to paint it anyways. So I wanted to paint the top. Now he really likes the top and doesn't think he's going to go with the vinyl, which I agree. I will. It's come out. I mean, this is just. It's came out really, really nice. So we've wet sanded and cleaned it enough that there's no dirt in it. I will show. I'm not perfect. I have a run right there, top corner, above the hemi stripe. It happens. So that clear can get wet sanded and buffed out. I have one other tiny, tiny whittle run up in that front fender, right by the wheel. So we can finish all this out after he puts the engine in it. He has a modern 392 with the 8-speed automatic going in the, and that is a 68 Coronet painted on Stupid Bowl Sunday. Everyone's in front of a TV screaming at overpaid babies. I'm out here having fun working on stuff. You guys enjoyed the video? Rah. There's the Coronet.